Hey, what's going on, everyone? So I'll give it a little bit. Today I am on the road, so I'm actually back in San Diego here with the parents. One of their best friends is having like a birthday party, so I'm going to join them here. So I'm going to do it from my car. It is a little bit warm. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like cold outside, but yet hot in this car, so I'm trying to run the AC. Give me one sec. I'm going to post it to my other private group. You know, the weird thing is you can do these lives from a private group in the past, but that is no longer allowed to happen, so I'm going to do it here. Okay, so I'll wait a little bit, have some people jump in, and then we'll rock and roll from there. Today I'm drinking, while on the road, I'm really big into 0-calorie organic drinks. So here I got this company today, USDA organic certified, and it's like a roast green tea. I've actually haven't had this type of green tea in a long time, and green tea is like my favorite tea to drink. I usually drink sencha green tea or jasmine green tea as well. This is actually surprisingly good, so I might start drinking this a lot more. So here's a good company for you guys if you're interested. I'm getting no kickbacks whatsoever. This is just a brand I have. And it's in glass too, so you're not getting those xenoestrogens or microplastics as well. Guys, let me know if my earphones work well and you can hear me. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever on any topic, I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'll try my best to answer it if I do. But anyways, the importance of drinking out of glass, okay, especially with hot liquids, because you don't want to get those abundance of those xenoestrogens that are going to spike your estrogen as well. And remember, hormones are kind of like a symphony, you know? So when you have too much of one guy playing, then a lot of other guys need to stop playing, and then it's going to mess up your hormonal balance altogether. And then, yeah, I mean, you don't get a bunch of those microplastics in there as well, clogging your arteries. So let me get a quick sip. David is in the house. David, what's going on? I'm actually calling from San Diego today. My parents' friend's best friend is having a kind of a birthday party, so I'm going to join them here. So I drove down from Las Vegas, and I'm going to do this from my car today. So, okay, so let's rock and roll, you guys. And hopefully this chat, I'll be able to save you guys a lot of money and improve your looks and improve your metabolic and hormonal health as well. And today we're going to cover a pretty popular topic. David, can you let me know, are my earphones working well? I have two, and one of them doesn't work. I'm afraid like I might have actually grabbed the wrong one here. But either way, you guys should hear me pretty well. So we're going to cover, like, is it necessary for you to purchase isolated vitamin and mineral supplements? Do they even do anything? Is it necessary? Are some of them even toxic and stuff of that sort? And again, you guys, with online advice, please remember, I'm just going to kind of go over these tips as like something I would do, but it's tough for anyone to ethically give you advice without first assessing you, okay? So you got to be careful with online people, even my information, because inevitably, even if they are very competent, they just don't know you personally, you know? They don't know your specific situation. And think about it this way. Like, let's say you go to the doctors and they don't even talk to you, and they give you like some medication right off the bat. That would be kind of weird, right? But it's the same exact thing with online advice on any sort. It's like they don't know your specific situation. So here's like what I would do in terms of like, is it necessary to purchase vitamin or mineral supplements in isolated form, which again, kind of like are expensive, and we'll go over the details here. I'm going to just go over the checklist. Once again, they're not in any hierarchy of importance. Some are going to be more important than others at different parts of your journey. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. So let's cover the basics. So when I'm at the store and I'm like, okay, do I really need this vitamin or mineral supplement? And that's a good question. And usually, you know, they're like 15, sometimes like $30 for the real high-end ones. And the first thing I would ask is like, most people, and when I mean most, I mean like literally 99% of people, don't need it in the initial phases of their journey, okay? So what I mean by that is a lot of people are, their foundation in mental and physical health in general is somewhat of a mess, and their priorities should be really on fixing that foundation to begin with. And what is that foundation composed of? We've covered it in many of our lives many times, but one of the things, there are four things in this foundation. And I guarantee you, like with 9 out of 10 Americans being metabolically sick right now, that means hands down 90% of Americans are not mastering even these 4 fundamental things I'm going to cover right now at even close to mastery, like even close, even a hint of mastery, because we wouldn't have these kind of terrifying statistics with 9 out of 10 Americans being metabolically sick if this wasn't the case, okay? Dan, good to see you. David as well. So what are they? I'm going to just briefly glaze over them, okay? One is, sleep or just generally central nervous system management. Again, like almost nobody is doing this. Like, are you genuinely sleeping like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. roughly? Everyone is going to be a little bit different, but generally speaking, the body repairs itself mentally physically rather, from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and mentally from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So how many people are really sleeping at those intervals or those hours, or getting really good quality sleep during that time interval? Like almost nobody, especially with the average American getting about 5 hours of sleep every single night. Another aspect of central nervous system management: are you being consciously aware of your micro stressors and managing them? So those could be abundant in society today. So financial stressors, a toxic coworker, a relationship that's maybe has some friction, like a personal relationship, high inflammation diets. So Dane asked, do you think the Apple Watch measures your sleep that well? That's a good question. I don't know personally. I don't use those devices. I just moreover go over like, how am I feeling, Am I feeling very well rested? Am I having like a foggy brain? So for example, having intuition with your body is always going to be the best bet, but analytics is good too. So like if you're having trouble, like physically recovering from workouts, there could be a few things going on. But one of the main things is, am I getting good quality sleep between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m.? So some people would say yes, but then I would look at their journals and it looks like they're in bed at 10 p.m., but they're on their phone for a while or chatting to their partner or whatever, and then really going to sleep at like 11 p.m. And when you average it out throughout the week, you'll see the person lost 7 hours of physical repair time, every week. And that's a whole day worth of a sleep loss every single week. And obviously the person's not going to be able to optimize their energy or their workouts or recovery from an injury by sleeping that way. And that situation is even like super ideal compared to how most people sleep, because most people even sleep far more poorly than that, So these little intricate details are quite important. But yes, sometimes analytics is important too, because it could allow a person to objectively see like, hey, I thought I was doing well, but it looks like I'm actually not doing well. Or sometimes with sleep pathologies, like psychologically induced chronic insomnia is very, very common. In that situation, you have like a racing mind and you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, et cetera, et cetera. In that situation, you'll see that patients typically report very poor quality sleep because when you're not sleeping well, your subjective experience of stress is quite amplified. So let's say you run into a stress that's typically like 2 out of 10 when you're in a very well-rested state. If you run into that same exact stressor, from a subjective experience, it could be perceived as a 6 out of 10 when not in a well-rested state, So oftentimes then when you look at these people's logs, their sleep still might suck, but it's not as bad as they think they are. And this might actually give them good hope. You know what I mean? It might think of like, hey, it's bad, but I thought it was far worse. There's definitely some room for improvement, but it's actually better than I thought it was. And this allows them, from at least one vantage point, to decrease their anxiety. Because oftentimes, unfortunately, with sleep pathologies, you run into these nasty loops of then having anxiety about not sleeping well again and waking up even more tired. And that actually makes it even tougher for you to go to sleep, even at that. So it kind of is this nasty cycle that you have to be careful of when you fall into. So David asks, any natural sleep aids you recommend? Yes. Natural sleep aids, having a good bedtime ritual. I know David's rolling his eyes at me here. Having a good bedtime ritual. Guys, with natural sleep aids or pharmaceutical grade sleep aids, unfortunately, you run into these situations of like managing symptoms, and managing symptoms only yields more symptoms over time. It could actually be of great help in the short term, but especially with sleeping aids, what ends up happening, especially with like pharmaceutical grade or over-the-counter sleeping aids like NyQuil, for example, is people start using it and it helps initially, but then once they keep using it, their body habituates to it, the central nervous system, and then they have to up the dose. And this happens with about like 2 to 3 cycles, and then eventually they've kind of maxed out the dose, and their sleeping pathology is there and still there, and oftentimes even worse than it was initially, So David, unfortunately, even with organic supplement aids, it's still kind of the same thing as even if you were to use a pharmaceutical grade. It's just unfortunately the only difference really is just the potency is probably not as high. So you'd have to take more of that product to reach that kind of threshold. But in short, you guys, even if you use natural herbal medicines and stuff of that sort, again, you're falling into these kind of using it, these symptom management strategies that are oftentimes, the best way I can say it is not meeting the problem at the level of the problem. So oftentimes, even in an organic supplement, or let's say NyQuil, for example, or something you would get from your doctor for sleep, it's trying to oftentimes meet, to correct a problem that's really at an emotional and thinking dimension at a physical dimension. So it's not meeting the problem at the level of the problem. Sometimes it could be at a physical dimension in the sense of a person has too much coffee, works out way too late, stuff of this sort. So in that case, it is at a biological dimension. But then my recommendation for that person is just stop working out so late. Or if you do have coffee, finish drinking it at like 10 a.m., or just have a cup first thing in the morning and probably not drink like multiple cups throughout the day so those stimulants build up. Usually the phase out process of a stimulant is about like 8 hours or so, So obviously if you have some coffee like at 4 p.m., it's still in your system by the time 10 p.m. rolls around. And obviously that's going to have a hindering effect on your sleep quality. You can't take a stimulant and then expect to be having high quality deep sleep for most people. No absolutes. You'll find some exceptions to any argument, of course, but for most people, that is really how it works. So you got to meet the problem at the level of the problem. And if you're using even organic medicines or herbs or pharmaceutical grade doctor prescribed medication, it's still oftentimes not meeting the problem at the level of the problem from how I see people using it, So my recommendation always, if you're having sleep pathologies, I've done many podcasts on this already, just text me in the comments section. I'll link it to you, and I break it down in way more detail in those podcasts on like reasonable solutions like that you could actually do to correct sleeping pathologies. But remember, when you're faced with sleeping pathologies, it's one of your body's many cries for help that something is going on that's not right somewhere. So it's your job to then investigate further and really meet the problem at the level of the problem. I mean, that's really key, you guys. If you really want to get to a concrete resolution, sometimes, unfortunately, it's difficult because it requires the person to maybe change their job or change their relationship or change their relationship with themselves. You know what I mean? And it's not as easy as buying like a vitamin C supplement and just taking that. You know what I mean? But that inevitably is what will create the change and the resolution that people are seeking. Thank you. You make sense. So the average trying to sleep. Yeah, 8 hours a night is key. And again, you guys, like midday naps are phenomenal for anti-aging, hormonal balance, a state of well-being, even at a mental level as well. You just feel like very refreshed and active and good, etc., etc. So midday naps, bam, are key. That's what's going to get you to have great skin. One of the things, at least, that's going to get you to have great, not an aged appearance, etc., etc., and as well maybe live into your 90s or 100s, hopefully. So again, looking at the foundations, guys, not to get too sidetracked here. Before you buy isolated vitamins or minerals and spend so much money on that stuff, just think like, am I sleeping well? Am I managing my micro stressors in life well? Am I at least working out 4 to 5 days a week, half of those workouts being pretty intense, and in my capabilities and towards my goals, you know? Whatever the training style is dependent on your goals. I like to train for aesthetics. Some people like tennis. Some people like mountain climbing. David here likes fishing a lot. You got to just determine what's right for you, you know? Am I living close to my core values? That's huge too, because, you know, if your core values are, you know, I want to work from home and do my own thing as an artist, if that's your core value, but you're in an office doing legal work as a lawyer, there's a huge discrepancy there. There's a huge story gap, and that's going to cause a lot of stress on the central nervous system and then cause a cascade of effect throughout your biology eventually, which will lead to a life of obesity, misery, and disease due to various maladaptive behavior, etc., etc. And the fourth thing is, on the foundational level, am I really mastering my nutrition protocols? And guys, I mean, I can't tell you, I've been doing this for like 20 years now professionally, but really in the field like 40 years at this point. And I can't tell you like how many times I get people that are, you know, very sick, very overweight, or doing Ozempic or whatever, coming up and telling me like, oh, I'm eating well and working out well. It can't be further from the truth. And then like I ask these people like, oh, what do you mean by, what's your definition of eating well? They're either like say like, oh, I'm eating less, or I'm doing keto, or I'm doing fasting, or cockroach diet, ABC, whatever, you know? Couldn't be further from the truth. And again, the statistics just speak for themselves. 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically sick right now. Trust me, if they knew anything about proper nutrition or how to live like a human being, 9 out of 10 Americans would not be metabolically sick right now, okay? Metabolic health, for any of you guys that are interested, you know, what's your blood pressure? What's your body fat percentage at? For males, it should be around 10 or 12%. Triglycerides, healthy HDL, where's that at? You know, where's your resting average blood glucose levels at? Are they all in range? You know, those are good places to start in looking at to see if you're actually metabolically healthy. And 9 out of 10 people aren't. So it's good to, you know, be positive in life, but it's good to also see where things aren't going right and be positive in the sense that you can have a solution for them and take the appropriate action. But don't be like delusional positive, meaning like, you know, you have like a big belly, like big man boobs, your metabolic health is all over the place. You need a half a bottle of antidepressants just to get up first thing in the morning to get the day started. It's time to like, hey, you know, there's a lot not going right for me, and be positive in the sense that you could find the solution, which you can if it becomes a priority for you, but then actually take action in carrying that solution through, you know? So some tips regarding that is definitely, you're not going to find it on TikTok or Instagram. You got to start reading books, you know, read like 2 to 3 books a month on the topic you're struggling on every month, you know, and then you're going to get new ideas in your head and then start taking action on those ideas. Take courses. Trust me, those courses and books are far cheaper far, far cheaper than that trip you're going to go on this year, which is, like that trip to Europe or wherever, which is just going to bring you a sugar high at best, and then you're back to, the swamp or cesspool that led to whatever is going on, you know what I mean, in your life, with no resolution, and now you're down $2,000 to $3,000. Instead, I would just take that money, don't spend it on travel. If I'm like overweight and have metabolic health issues or mental health issues, really just double down and spend that money on books, courses, mentors that are going to get you out of that life of normalized pathology. That's what's really going to enhance the quality of your life, not like another trip or just going out and spending a lot of money on fast food or going out at restaurants. There is no healthy restaurant food. So shocker, I know. But 99% of even high-end restaurants you go to are just factory farmed, super industrially raised agricultural food that's cooked in industrial seed oils. You're probably getting like trace amounts of 15 or 20 different synthetic chemicals in a single meal, even at super expensive restaurants you go to. I'm not going to call out any restaurants here, but trust me, you guys, if you're eating out, you're not eating healthy food at all. Like 100% guarantee you're not. You're getting exposed to a whole bunch of GMOs, antibiotics, steroids, beta agonists, probably like at least 4 to 5 different synthetic herbicides, pesticides, insecticides in every single meal, and then most likely microplastics too if you're eating it out of a plastic tray. I mean, the toxic load is huge in this food, and people still say they're like eating healthy, but trust me, like they're completely lost. That's why it's important to be humble sometimes and realize like, hey, maybe I don't know that much, but I could learn. But then you have to take those steps that I mentioned in learning that. So another thing to consider is remember, food, you're made out of food. Everything about you is made out of food. The sperm and egg that required to join were both made out of food, required food to form. And then you growing in your mother required food to keep growing and form as well in the fetus. And then as you're born, to sustain your life, you require food to sustain it. So everything about you, all your visceral tissue, all your nerves, all the skeleton, there are 12 human systems. All 12 of those human systems require food to function. You know what I mean? So if the food you're getting is quite poor, it has a huge toxic load, like it's grown in factory farms and grown in monocrop situations, then obviously don't be surprised if you have like various like health issues or aesthetic challenges your whole entire life, because that's just what's going to happen. And that's it, it's 1 out of every like probably 5,000 cases, it's genetic, you know what I mean? So in that case, the person could be doing all the right things, but just unfortunately, they've just been dealt a bad hand. Like young kids with cancer, for example, and that's just the unfortunate truth. But that's like 1 out of every few thousand cases. It's extremely, extremely rare, and definitely not 9 out of 10 like metabolically unhealthy Americans right now. You know what I mean? So that's obviously not genetic. That's due to poor lifestyle and nutritional choices and many decades of doing that. Okay. And a lot of times too, you guys, I hear people say like, it requires a lot of effort to stay in shape, and it's just not the case. I mean, it requires way less effort. Like even actually being overweight requires a lot of effort, time, and money, like a tremendous amount of money. You have to, go to the restaurants and the fast food places or order them on Uber Eats and pay, usually 300% more than what that meal actually costs. That's generally, but usually it actually costs far more. And then, you got to pull up to that restaurant, go wait, be seated, order, pay, leave, and do that day after day after day after day. And then when you go to the grocery store, instead of, picking the steak and vegetables and eggs, you pick the processed food. It requires a lot of effort. The processed food is not usually, every single time per quantity of nutrients, actually massively more expensive than the actual whole food you'd get, like a potato, for example. It costs pennies, like a single potato. But a bag of potato chips, which is made out of like 2 potatoes, costs a few bucks, you know? So to give you an idea of the inflation that occurs from going from a whole foods to a processed food. And the calories usually go way up. The omega-3 usually goes way up as omega-6 usually goes way up as well, which is a pro-inflammatory micronutrient. You can look up the inflammation theory of disease and see that pretty much all disease arises from chronic inflammation. And the omega-3 goes way down, which is an anti-inflammatory micronutrient, okay? So now you're getting like a poor ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, which is causing havoc and chronic inflammation in your body, in your joints, in your visceral tissue, all of the systems of the human body. So food is important, okay? And my argument here, getting to the point, is if a person is genuinely eating just whole food, I've never seen anyone have deficiencies in micronutrients like vitamins and minerals that actually require supplementation. I've never seen it. There's a few minor exceptions, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it's rare. It's rare. I mean, almost never exists, okay? Like, for example, look here, 8 ounces of a ribeye steak, right? It has actually 60,000 nutrients that are measurable in a ribeye steak, okay? I'm just going to mention a few of them just to give you an example, because these are common supplements that are purchased. So 8 ounces of ribeye steak, vitamin B3, you already have 119% of your daily value. B6, 100% of your daily value. B12, 142% of your daily value. Zinc, 111% of your daily value. Selenium, 131% of your daily value. And you get an entire 65 grams of protein for that 8 ounces, okay? Boom, you're hitting all of your needs, all your daily needs, no problem, for a tremendous amount of micronutrients just from 8 ounces of ribeye, okay, from real food. All right, and that's just to list a few. Again, I'm not going to list all 60,000 measurable compounds in like beef, for example. So if you want to upgrade, you can go to organic food then, like at least USDA organic certified, even if it's industrial organic, okay? So you're not getting exposed to a bunch of those synthetic biocides. And on top of that, you know, it depends on how they farm. There's a lot of nuance, and this is a very long and in-depth conversation. But if it's real organic practices, you're not going to get a farmer that uses biocides on a regular basis. It's like a last-ditch resort. And even if they do use it, they're using, for organic practices, they're using like vinegar and water, or soap and water, or salt and water, or copper. You know, these are organic pesticides. And they're going to be much different than the atrazine or Roundup that's used in industrial operations, okay? Which, again, let's use common sense here, guys. Like, what would you rather have? I have 2 apples here. One apple, I spray vinegar and water on, which is an organic biocide. And on another apple, I spray Roundup, which is a synthetic herbicide, like a very popular herbicide that's used in industrial factory farm type of situations, okay? Like, which one would you eat? You would obviously eat, I hope, you know, the apple that I'm spraying vinegar and water on, and not the apple that I'm spraying atrazine and Roundup on. You know, this is just like super common sense, you know? Like, let's say I spray rat poison on one apple. Are you going to eat that apple? But rodenticide is a pesticide that's used on food that's sprayed on the crops oftentimes as well, you know? It's so common. Gabriel, what's going on? So the good thing about organic practices too is what I'm getting at is the soil food web is not disrupted if they're proper organic practices. So again, the healthier the soil, the healthier the crops, the more nutrients you're going to get in the food, right? Because you can only get nutrients from food that has those nutrients. You know what I mean? So if obviously the food you're eating is lacking those nutrients as well, there's no way you're going to get those nutrients, and then you're going to have nutrient deficiencies, and that's going to lead to various health issues. Now again, guys, this is a long conversation. I'm just summarizing in short But I hope you guys can connect the dots by using a little bit of common sense and see where I'm headed with this, okay? Just going to get a quick sip here and then continue. Let me see. Jay, Elliot, what is going on? Gabriel's in the house. So another step up is biodynamic. So let's say you're at a Whole Food, you're just eating like steak and eggs, but you're like, I want to upgrade. Now you're eating organic steak and eggs. You're like, I want to upgrade even more. Now the next step is you want to purchase from places like Demeter certified products, which are going to be a little tough to find in the US. They're definitely far more abundant in Western Europe. But biodynamic farming is going to produce a lot more nutrient density in the food. Can you share your ideas on regenerative farming? Yeah, this is what we're getting to right now, David. So the next step is biodynamic farming, okay? Biodynamic farming is honestly what most of you guys have honestly a picture of when you think of farming. You think of like many animals on the same farm out in pasture. They're outside in sunshine all day in grass. A lot of different plants and vegetables, etc., etc. That's kind of the farming style that's going to produce the most nutrient density as compared to industrial agriculture. So, but it's very rare to find. But don't give up, okay? I'm going to give you some good resources too. I've done the research for you. It's rare, but you can find them because most places, especially like if you shop at a grocery store, are going to come from industrial operations. Even if it's organic too, it's going to oftentimes, not every time, so I don't want to put every company down, but oftentimes be from industrial organic. So meaning you have like row and row and row and acre and acre and acre of crops or carrots, for example, or cabbage or something of this, or huge houses that just have chickens inside of it. You know, broiler chickens are for meat, egg-laying hens are for eggs, and stuff of this sort. You just see monocropping or single species crop systems, okay? So meaning you have like one type of animal or one type of crop and like really not much else for miles and miles and miles. So this type of operation is typically provides like nutrient devoid foods. I don't know, it's like a fireworks thing went off. I don't know if I did that, but nutrient devoid foods. So in the sense that it's going to be whole food, it's going to definitely be more nutritious than processed food, but it's not going to be as nutritious as biodynamically raised food or like wild game as well. So the next step, if you want to upgrade even more, you can go into wild game, wild fish, wild forage, because nature is going to be the best farmer around. She's been doing it for billions and billions of years. She's gone through 5 massive extinction events that have changed the soil composition of the planet quite a bit. And that's what's given rise to the soil that has given rise to the food we're able to eat today, okay? Stuff of that sort. So I've covered this topic a lot in a lot of other lives, guys, so I'm not going to go into details there. But in general, the takeaway I want you guys to take is if you're eating whole food and you're getting an abundance and a good variety of it, like for example, you're getting at least like, let's say 20 to 25 different sources of fiber per week. It doesn't have to be per day, but distributed throughout the week. You should be pretty solid. And you're not going to have any nutrient deficiencies that are going to require you to take isolated vitamins and minerals. Especially if you're getting an abundance of high quality pasture raised meats or wild game or wild fish, all right? Because you can get a lot of the vitamins and minerals, almost all of them actually, from pasture raised meats, from wild fish, as you can from vegetables and fruit as well. So you don't need to specifically focus on just eating vegetables and fruit, although I'd recommend you establish more of an omnivore type diet for your personal needs. So, because kind of think about it, guys, if like cattle are herbivores, right? So that's their species specific diet. So they're out in pasture eating a whole bunch of different variety of grass, forage. Those nutrients, those phytonutrients, are going to get absorbed into their tissue and their muscle and visceral tissue, which you're going to end up eating, okay? And typically on a pasture, although it looks like a single blade of grass, if you actually look at it in a microscope, you'll see that there's about like 100 different species of grass on a single acre of pasture, if not even more. And the larger the variety they eat, the more variety of those nutrients you're going to get in your diet too. Where in a factory farm situation, they're typically just getting fed a lot of genetically modified, usually corn and soy, also grown with a gargantuous amount of herbicides, typically Roundup Ready, okay? Which will disrupt the gut microbiome and will cause like various other health issues. And there are no safety testing done on these complete formulations, these herbicides, before they're being sprayed on your food. They're just tested in isolation. The active ingredient is tested in isolation on its own, and that's it. So never as a complete formulation, but it's important to understand that the complete formulation is inevitably what's used on your food to grow your food. That's sprayed on your food, and then the animal eats it, and then it bioaccumulates in the tissue of the animal. Then you end up eating it. So that's how it works. And then you obviously accumulate all of this toxicity as well. Okay. So wild game, wild fish. Some good companies to check out, you guys, are like the #5 barbeef.com. I actually volunteered on that ranch. Frank Fitzpatrick sells just wild cattle, basically. Don't use any vaccines, medicines. They're out on pasture 24/7. They have a large variety of forage to get as well. You can go to forceofnaturemeats.com. You can buy elk, deer, and wild boar there. Wild fish at the grocery store is amazing, but I'm trying to think of Vital Choice. That's what I'm looking for. It's a great company if you want a larger variety. I feel Whole Foods actually does a good job at having a good variety of wild fish at all times. But if you want to expand and have an even larger variety, you can go to vitalchoice.com and order from that company. Very good company, great customer service, great variety as well. They're also very picky about fishing sustainably and fishing in areas that aren't heavily polluted, okay? If that's a concern for you. So another thing to consider, the 5th point here, whether you need vitamins or minerals, is, just get blood work done. That's how you know for sure. All right. So like a comprehensive nutrition panel, individualized like blood test as well. You can get these from like Quest Labs or LabCorp, from a registered dietitian, stuff of that sort. I do these with my clients. I actually have a medical doctor and a registered dietitian I work with. So I'm able to order these labs for a fraction of the cost and have them delivered to the person's house. So they don't need to go through the annoyance of having to get a prescription from a doctor and then explaining themselves to the doctor. And then oftentimes the doctor also says it's not needed, which is like pretty ridiculous at times, especially if a person is doing their due diligence with doing a lot of early screening and testing, which is, I would highly recommend that you guys get a thorough, since there are a lot of males here, like a full male health blood panel done every single year. Also a full hormonal panel as well. And then kind of keep track of those. I'll just get it done from the same lab all the time, because different labs, they test slightly differently, so it's going to throw your numbers off a bit from time to time, okay? So get it done through the same lab. I do it through LabCorp personally. And have an Excel chart, and keep track of all these and see from year to year, what's going on. Because you guys, if you catch stuff early on, any disease, even cancer, is really easy to treat in almost all cases. But if you wait and let it build up year after year after year after year, and then like cancer spreads to multiple organs, for example, then it becomes like very, very difficult and extremely costly to treat. And unfortunately, in late stages in cancer, oftentimes it can't be treated either, But the good thing is if you do this early screening and get this blood work done early on, it's easy to catch, man. And you can see these things see these red flags from a million miles away. And you don't need to be one of the almost 900,000 Americans that dies from heart disease every single year, which is crazy. It's almost like 1 million people dying from something that's like ultra preventable. I mean, it's so easy to not have a heart attack, and yet we have 900,000 Americans dying from heart attacks, almost 120,000 Americans dying from type 2 diabetes, which is, again, so easy to prevent. So easy. With the most minute, basic of effort and education, these things can be prevented. 125,000 Americans dying from strokes. There's a bunch of other stats I kind of forgot off the top of my head. I think it's like close to 625,000 Americans dying from cancer. Half of Americans develop cancer within their lifetime now, et cetera, et cetera. So blood work, another thing to consider is sometimes you may be sourcing really high quality nutrition, but you might have something going on with your gut, so getting stool testing done is important. I also have like a registered dietitian I get these tests ordered from for my clients as well, but having like a GI map test done or like a Biome FX test done, these are usually shipped to your house and you get it done, you ship it out to the laboratory and they give you an analysis of how well your gut is doing, and that way that's functioning perfectly. You guys remember, you want to, everyone says the gut is important. It is important. Every system in the human body is important. What are you going to do without your heart? You know what I mean? Or your lungs, or your small intestine. You know what I mean? You need everything. Everything is there for a reason. And every system is important, but that includes the digestive system as well, because that's where you assimilate nutrients. And then those nutrients are then delivered to the rest of your body to sustain your health. Mental and physical health, okay? It's not just physical. Your neurotransmitters are created in your gut, for example, okay? So obviously, if your gut isn't working properly, it's going to have a tough time assimilating various nutrients. And remember, like I mentioned earlier in the live, your body is all nutrition. It's made out of nutrition. Okay, so everything in you is made out of food. So if the quality of food you're getting is poor, don't be surprised if you have like chronic health issues or your hair's falling out or whatever. You have other stuff going on in your life, okay? Lisa, what is going on? Okay, another thing to consider, we're almost done here. I got 2 more points. But another thing to consider is you have to remember, in nature, vitamins and minerals are assimilated through a vitamin and mineral complex. Like when you eat an orange, you're not getting just vitamin C. You're getting vitamin C plus a gargantuous amount of other phytonutrients, other vitamins and minerals, basically, okay? Many of which I guarantee you, we haven't even discovered yet, okay? I'm sure there's so many more vitamins and minerals to discover than what we know thus far. So when you're inevitably buying like a vitamin C supplement, let's say 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, that's a pretty common dosage, you're getting just vitamin C. You're not getting all of that vitamin and mineral complex that comes in tandem with vitamin C that your digestive system has spent millions of years evolving to be able to absorb and recognize, okay? That's important to remember, all right? So now when you take the vitamin C supplement, let's say 1,000 milligrams, let's say that's the equivalent, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but let's say that's the equivalent of eating like 10 oranges of vitamin C. Now your body's like, okay, so I just had 10 oranges worth of vitamin C, but I don't recognize this as an isolated micronutrient. Now I have to replicate it, and I have to take different vitamins and minerals from my own tissue to replicate that vitamin and mineral complex to be able to recognize it in my digestive system and to assimilate it and then break it down, okay? So now, let's say, for example, you got rid of some itch on your body, but now your hair's falling out, you know what I mean? So this is how it works, you know what I mean? And it's very tough to balance, and oftentimes, you guys, most people literally, if they're eating a whole food diet, if they're eating actually like a legit nutritious diet, which almost nobody is, I know they claim to be, but they're not, or we wouldn't have 9 out of 10 Americans being metabolically sick right now. I've never seen anyone actually need isolated vitamins and minerals, ever, okay? And on top of that, if you think you do, I would just recommend getting like the blood work done first, And then if you are deficient in something, I'll try to get that vitamin or mineral or whatever from actual food first that's abundant in that deficiency. So like iron is deficient in a few people. I would eat organ, like liver, for example. a bit more, like for a month or two, retake, and you will see it's not going to be deficient anymore, okay? Or like, for example, I mentioned with the 8 ounces of ribeye, just 8 ounces a day, you know, you pretty much have all your B vitamins met. Vitamin B3, 119%, B6, 100%, B12, 142%, zinc, 111% of your daily values, okay? And 65 grams of protein on top of that, all right? So I doubt if you ate that, especially from a pasture-raised, grass-fed, grass-finished source, and then on top of that ate some elk from forceofnature.com and maybe some wild fish once or twice a week, dude, I don't really see how you're going to be deficient in any of these nutrients, especially since a lot of the nutrients in meat and fish is more easily bioavailable than from a plant source, etc., etc. Joya, what is going on? Good to see you. Okay, and then our last topic, it's not so much due to vitamins and minerals, but moreover with omega-3 supplements, which people take a lot of as well. And they're actually quite expensive. And in my opinion, honestly, very rarely needed. So for example, even if you eat, if you just eat a diet that's composed of pasture-raised meats, wild fish, organic fruit and vegetables, your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio will already be 1-to-1, which is ideal, or somewhere near 1-to-1, which is perfect. And you don't need to tamper with it anymore. Of course, with the American diet, what you're going to have is an omega-6 of like 20, a ratio of like 20 to every 1 omega-3. But that's because the American diet is composed of factory farmed meats, like a lot of, you know, cage-free chicken, eggs, processed food, etc., etc., which are all going to be heavily reliant on corn, you know, and other substances that will increase the omega-6 through the roof, especially cooking oils. Like industrial cooking oils are ultra high in omega-6. And that's going to hinder your ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 and once again create a chronic inflammatory response. And if you look up the inflammation theory of disease, you will see that's where a lot of pretty much all disease arises from just chronic inflammation. Other things that increase your inflammation a tremendous amount too are being overweight, having a bacterial, something that creates like an immune response in your body. So any kind of autoimmune disease, which are most always due to poor food choices throughout a poor person's life. It doesn't just like happen out of nowhere, okay? Stuff of this sort, all right? So the omega-3, what a lot of people do is they keep to their standard American diet, which is extremely high in omega-6 because they keep eating factory farm meats for the discount and stuff of this sort, and processed food such as cereals, cookies, etc. And what they try to do is they buy an omega-3 supplement and then try to up their omega-3. This is a poor strategy. What you really want to do is just go into a more natural diet, which is not only going to balance out your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, but also just make weight loss extremely easy, very easy for you to sustain a very lean physique all year round, and very easy for you to sustain good metabolic health markers such as resting blood glucose levels, triglyceride levels, healthy HDL, blood pressure, healthy body fat range, you know, which again for males should be 10 or 12%, etc., etc. So that's my take, you guys. A lot of these supplements are very expensive. If you do end up buying them, I would highly recommend buying something that's USDA organic certified, so it has that USDA organic label, something that's third-party tested, etc., etc. Because if you buy the wrong supplements too, you have to understand that if the raw ingredients that the company is using comes from a factory farmed or industrial operation that uses a gargantuous amount of biocides to grow that crop, and they process it and condense it into a concentrated form, then you get concentrated amounts of all those chemicals in that supplement, and also an inferior form of vitamins and minerals too, because they're in isolated form and they don't come in a vitamin and mineral complex, okay? So I hope that clarifies it, and that way you guys can make better decisions for yourself, whatever that decision may be. And as an endpoint, I'm going to just start saying this at the end of every live. You guys, we have to stop normalizing obesity, misery, and disease in our country, you know, in America. And it's not normal to, you know, be on a whole bunch of medical drugs all your life and not feeling well, not looking well, spending all your money on processed food and random non-essential expenses, but then, you know, counting your pennies when it comes to buying pasture-raised meats and organic food, et cetera, like the average American, like I always say, spends $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses every single year without questioning it, like at all, for a split second. And then you tell them like, hey, you know, a $6,000 a day, a year would buy you, you know, 2,000 calories worth of organic food all year round, roughly. They're like, oh, that's too expensive. I'm like, dude, you just told me you're struggling greatly with being obese and on all these medical drugs and not looking great. And you also told me you're spending $8,000 to $16,000 a year on all of these activities which are leading to your obesity, misery, and disease, most likely. And now you're telling me also that you don't have $6,000, you know, to spend on organic food. Come on, man. You gotta wake up a bit, you know? And you have to be conscious of what I refer to as these mind viruses, these belief systems that lead to various behaviors, that lead you to believe that various behaviors, that lead you to certain, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but basically a mind virus is some kind of idea or belief system that leads to certain behaviors that lead to poor health over time, you know? So like a good example of a mind virus is like you have an overweight guy on a bunch of medical drugs, has like saggy boobs, and instead of getting help or buying organic food, instead of hiring a mentor or buying organic food or maybe buying some books on Amazon, used books on Amazon are like $1 or $2, they go on like some trip to Europe, you know, 2-week trip for like $3,000 or $4,000. And then they come back and they still have all the same problems. And you can see they're always like conscious about how they even take their pictures on their trips. And even when they take their pictures, you can see their boobs kind of hanging out of their shirt, et cetera, et cetera. And they do that, no problem, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 on a trip, boom, gone. But 2,000 to 3,000 on organic food, oh, I got to think about it, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 on, you know, good educational courses or really good health books. Oh, I got to think about it. You know what I mean? This is a mind virus that's going to lead to normalization of obesity, misery, and medical drug dependence and disease in this person's life, their whole entire life. And God forbid they have kids, because they're going to teach their kids to be exactly the same way, you know, and their kids are going to suffer their whole entire life as well, and then have kids, and those kids are going to suffer. And on top of that, you know, all that spending, all it's doing is supporting these factory farms and unsustainable farming practices, which have a lot of labor abuse by relying on a lot of great people. But they're illegal immigrants that, you know, a lot of these companies take advantage of and don't provide them with good working conditions and exploit them basically. And you're supporting like all those practices, and you're supporting, I mean, you look at a lot of these factory farmed operations, it looks like a concentration camp, you know? And these animals are suffering their whole entire life, so you can get a discount and basically remain obese, you know? And there's that Native American saying too, that if you eat the flesh of a miserable animal or a miserable plant, you too become miserable yourself. And with 9 out of 10 Americans being metabolically sick, and close to, you know, 30% of Americans being on some type of psychiatric medications, and those are the ones that could just get diagnosed, have the money to have a diagnosis to get on medication. I would say it's more like 60 to 70% can be clinically diagnosed with some kind of mental disorder. Come on, you guys. It's time to wake up. And time to use your money more wisely to the benefit of yourself, to the benefit of the planet, supporting more sustainable, conscious companies, you know, and just stop living the life of obesity, misery, and disease. And you can do it. You can. You're already spending so much money on things that are just contributing to your obesity, misery, and disease. Just divert that money you're already spending to more health conscious practices, okay? And I hope this video was helpful and you guys can make better decisions for yourself, okay? And have a good weekend. Take care.